Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Trowel Talk Live. My name is Julianne Labreche. I'll be your moderator for today. Before we get started, just a quick couple of reminders. If you have any questions for our speaker, please put them in the chat function of Zoom. Adair Hushen is standing by to assist you and organize these questions for our speaker. Also, please make sure to mute yourself and turn off your video. Today's speaker is Marianne Van Berlo. Marianne describes herself as a passionate gardener who enjoys sharing her knowledge with others. Today, Marianne will share her thoughts on adding winter interest to your garden. So welcome, and over to you, Marianne.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Of course, as Julianne said, the topic is winter interest in the garden. And I have a bit of a warning I have to read out. Of course, everything now with litigious society, we have to have our warnings. The following presentation contains four-letter words such as snow and cold. It also contains graphic images of winter. This may cause panic among gardeners. In some cases, mild depression can result from viewing. Okay, got the legal stuff over with. So if this is what you're staring out your window at in the middle of winter, then your yard needs a bit of work, but hopefully no one's quite got despair in a yard yet. And let's start with looking at the bones of the garden. We always hear about you've got to have good bones in your garden. Well, what does that exactly mean? Well, looking at it in black and white in the dead of winter is a good way to consider what the bones are. And a description of them would be anything structural, anything permanent. So your house, fences, wooden structures, obelisks, arbors, pergolas, pathways that can be visible in the winter, nice straight lines. In this picture, we have the boxwood head. We have all the pruned conifers along the sides. We have the trees. We have a big pergola at the back. And those are the bones of this garden. So something that's always there, always visible, and it's basically the building block of your garden. This one's much less formal, but nonetheless has bones visible. If we look along this side, there's obviously a wall or something going on here that we can still see even in the snow. There's an arbor, there's the conifers, there's the large conifer on this side, and it's kind of balanced with this cluster of small conifers on this side. Your eye is drawn to the furthest part of the garden just because there is kind of a line of shrubs that do lead your eye in that direction. So again, less formal, but you can still definitely see the bones of this garden. And just another example, we've got the conifers that have that cone shape. We've got the dogwood, the nice red bones that have the branching that has the vase shape. There's the terracing here, the stairs. Even these vine balls could be considered part of the bones of this garden. Another example, this big willow makes a statement. Your eye is drawn to it. It's definitely a permanent feature of this garden. The shrubs and hedges along the side also are permanent features. So if you have these permanent features, already great. If you don't, there are certainly things you can add to make sure you include some. And we're going to look at shape and form, bark, trees that hold their leaves, berries and seed heads, grasses, structures, ornaments and statuary, and winter planters. Now, not all of these are bones. Some of these are more temporary things like the plantings because they come and go, but some of them are bones, and we'll look at them in their different uses in these different photos. So shape and form. I mean, conifers are one of the obvious ones. You get conical shape, you get tall, tall conical ones, short conical ones, you get mounding ones. And while it's not part of the shape and form, color is another winter interest here. And there are conifers with different colors. You've got your deep green, your lighter green, the golds, and of course they all stand out when you're looking at a blanket of white also. And you've also got the form of this arbor off to the side and the trees themselves, upright, round shapes, many different forms there. Isley Nursery is well known for their interesting and unusual conifers. So just another scene that shows the different shapes and forms for conifers. More conifers, and I just wanted to, this is an unusual color, and some of you may be going, that looks dead. It's not. There's actually a western red cedar called Amber Waves, and that's its color. So that would be a welcome addition to the winter garden. Something with a little varying, not only the shape, but varying the color also. And I'm a sucker for a well-pruned tree. And fruit trees, to me, the structure on them is like art, especially when you get a dusting of snow on them. So a well-pruned tree in your yard, such as this Japanese maple at the top. This one isn't pruned quite as much, but again, you can see the shape of the willow, kind of vase shape, the tree itself, and then the pendulous branches, the smaller tip branches just hanging down, very pretty. And this is a weeping mulberry that's been pruned properly. It's not often you see one that's pruned properly. People tend to give it a haircut, but really what you want to do is cut the bottom growth so that it continues to grow upward, but still has that weeping habit. So, you know, that would look beautiful in the winter landscape. Bark is another element that can add interest to your winter garden. So we've got, cornice, the red osier dogwood. This is a Heptacodium myconoides or seven sunflower, and it's got a beautiful exfoliating bark. Looks good all year, but the bark is the winter interest. And a shagbark hickory. And there's many more, but those are some. Here we have the aspen in the top left and a yellow birch here. Again, beautiful bark that stands out against the snow. And some trees don't lose their leaves all winter. So think of that when you're adding a tree to your landscape. Some of the oaks hold on to their leaves well into February, start dropping them in March again. And the columnar oak are one. And this is the American beech, again, holds its leaves. And the amber maple will hold its keys quite far into the fall quite often, or early winter, I should say. A lot of shrubs and trees have berries. Look for those to add some interest. Ilex verticillata, that is our native holly. This is a cherry tree still holding its fruit into the winter. And of course, rose hips can be quite beautiful. And the blue holly does quite well in our area. Now for the holly I just showed you in the previous slide and this one, you do need a male and female plant to have berries. But once they get growing, they put on a beautiful display. And of course can be cut and used for arrangements. Seed heads on your plants. So this is a good reason not to do a big fall cleanup. Leave some seed heads for interest in your garden. I've got a little eryngium here, sea holly, a stilby, hydrangea, and they all just look so pretty with a bit of snow on them. Here we have another cornice, the dogwood in the background. I believe that's Arctic fire, or it could be Arctic sun. And the Rudbeckia in the foreground with the little pom-pom of snow on top of each seed head. The grasses over here look quite interesting too. There's no snow on the grass, but look at the pattern you get down below. More grasses holding snow in the winter, along with some sedum in the foreground. Now, miscanthus is considered to be a bit invasive, so if you want to stick with something native, there is Indian grass that has that similar, and I shouldn't say the same, similar plume that might be a good choice instead. That's a native grass. Here we've got Calamagrostis Carl Forster grass, and it looks great in the winter. Assortment of grasses here. And the nice thing about grasses is that you also get some movement and the rustling sound, because of course they're all brown and dry in the winter. So it just adds another dimension to your winter garden. And I just thought this was a neat photo. You've got some Carl Forster grass here and a couple sedum, and this neat bark that seems to be staring back at you. I believe that's a poplar tree there, but I just thought that was so neat. Structures in the garden. These are the more permanent things. These would be considered bones, but you could certainly, if you've got a little stream or pond, add a little bridge. Pergola out here in the background among all these beautiful trees. Sorry, that's a gazebo. And that's a pergola. Again, it's just, instead of looking at just a blank garden with just, you know, a wall and trees in the background, this pergola really adds some interest. And of course, you've got the trees and the vines and the shrubs, all adding additional interest. Another little bridge. On its own, it wouldn't be very interesting, but mixed with some plantings, it just looks really, really interesting to look out your window at in the winter. Another pergola, a little more rustic, but even the vines on top of it add interest by leaving the stems. Well, obviously you're going to leave those because that's the only way you're going to get fruit next year, assuming this is a grapevine or something. But just look how the snow collects on the little twigs and branches of that vine. Then you've got the picnic table and the fence. And again, if this was a white fence, it wouldn't be half as interesting, but by adding some color to it, it looks pretty good. Tree in the background, again, with red tips on the branches. Conifers, shrubs, everything here is just adding to your winter landscape. Patio furniture takes on a whole new life in the winter. So if you've got furniture that is able to withstand winter or don't have a place to store it, then by all means leave it out where you can actually enjoy it, because it becomes a piece of art almost in the garden. Of course, here we've also got a pergola. We've got lots of shrubs. Planters, probably wouldn't advise leaving anything clay or ceramic out without putting something on top. You would get cracking on something like this. The fence adds interest, the background trees, it all adds to your view when you're sitting inside your house in the winter. Some more structures that add color because they've been painted this beautiful green. And of course, structure and interest. And these would definitely be considered bones of the garden with these lovely pathways marked out. And your eyes drawn to the circle in the distance, or the arch of the arbor in the distance. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be something as small as an ornament in the garden, your birdhouse, in this case, an obelisk. That's kind of a rustic obelisk. Art in the garden takes on a whole new form in the winter. This big ceramic vase with something carefully placed over it to prevent cracking so that water doesn't get in, expand, and cause it to crack. But it looks like it's wearing a hat because it's got this big pile of snow on it. And of course, art. In the summer, it may not stand out as much between all the leaves and the flowers and different colors, but in the winter, with more of a monochromatic color palette, it really stands out. The tree is definitely structural. The bench could be considered structural or ornamental because it's not really a permanent feature, but it certainly has enough presence to be considered part of the bones in this case. You can see how it almost looks inviting on a winter's day to go sit there, and maybe the birds are eating the fruit out of the tree and you could sit and enjoy that. This big fence to me is just inviting some garden art, but even so, maybe that's coming in the future. But for now, they've left their plants for the winter so that you get to enjoy those seed heads. And that's always a good idea. I kind of do a bit of both cleanup in the fall if I'm worried about things self-seeding. But then on the other hand, the birds will enjoy Rudbeckia and Echinacea. The snow looks great on sedum. So leave as much as you can and then worry about cleanup in the spring if that is a possibility in your schedule of life. This little folding screen looks great out in the winter, little birdhouse. All of these things are little ornamentations you can add to your landscape for the winter. And statuary, of course, is another form of ornament, and they have, take on a whole new life in the winter with a little bit of snow on them. Of course, you want to make sure it's something that can take some freezing, but most times there's cement, and cement should be okay. It shouldn't be absorbing any water, so should be fine without protection. And this is at Rideau Woodland Ramble. They have beautiful conifers, as you know, but their pond in the winter, they have these statues in front. So, it still looks really inviting and interesting. And the simple things you can do to your front entranceway is add a few planters, wreath on the door in this case. These are probably their same summer planters, and they've just decorated them for winter with some pine boughs and branches from dogwood. So that adds a whole level of interest again. Instead of just white snow coming all the way up the walkway, you've got some greenery greeting you. More greenery. Filling up planter that probably had flowers cascading over in the summer, and now it's got evergreen boughs and grasses and things overflowing from it. More planters and window boxes, all good ways to add some interest to your yard and to make your house look more appealing in the winter. So what will you add for winter interest? So what you need to do is observe your garden over the winter season and look at it from different vantage points. Where do you sit the most in the winter? So look out that window, or, when you're doing your food prep for dinner, are you looking out a kitchen window, and what do you see? So consider those, take some photos, and then take action. In the spring, in the winter already, you can start doing research of what shrubs or statuary or structures you might want to add to your garden. And then in the spring, do it. But of course, having said all of that, there's still an inherent problem with winter interest in our Canadian gardens, and that is we get a lot of snow. And if you've got 4 meters of snow, it doesn't matter what structure you've got or what hedges and shrubs you've got, you probably can't see them. But on an average winter, we can still enjoy our gardens in the winter. So please take the time to consider adding some winter interest. And of course, now we're ready for some questions.
Thank you very, very much, Marianne. That was so exciting for me, looking out at my garden, thinking about the winter. There is a nice question here that I'm sure you'll want to answer. Does one not have to empty large clay pots if they are covered with a plastic wrap? This is from Maren.
Oh, okay. Plastic, no. Ceramic, if you can, well, clay and ceramic, I generally put those inside. If you can, yeah, tip them over so water can't collect, like turn them upside down and then put a big garbage bag over top. Like, let's say you don't have room in a shed or garage to put them in. If you can at least put them so that they're not collecting water and give them a chance to dry out before winter hits, then they'll be fine too. But I mean, I've covered some statuary and things just using clear garbage bags because I really don't want to look at a orange or green or brown garbage bag all winter. So I figure if I put a clear one on, I can kind of still see my ornament, but I know it's not getting any winter damage.
Thank you. And a question from me. Do you personally use statuary in your garden and all of these sort of features that you're showing us?
Yes, I do. I use a lot of different things. I have a lot of little things that end up I have to bring inside. The bigger things just stay outside. But no, yes, I have some stone sculptures. I have a lot of the the Japanese pagoda style things and Buddhas and stuff like that just stay out and you can see it outside all winter.
That's very interesting. And you were speaking about, oh, sorry, here's another question. I won't ask mine. Can you mention the grasses again? In fact, that's what I was going to ask. That won't collapse when snow falls. And this is from Linda.
Okay, well, the miscanthus and the Karl Forster, they'll withstand quite a bit of snow. I've seen them under heavy, wet snow, and you think they're gone for the season, but then they do bounce back. Now, by March, they are, depends on the season, sometimes by mid-February, but definitely by March, they've had it. But those are the ones that will stand up for quite a long time. So miscanthus and the Karl Forster, Calumgrostis Karl Forster.
Excellent. I noticed that none of the evergreens were wrapped in your images, and I always thought you had to sometimes, well, you had to wrap them.
No, not necessarily. If it's hardy enough, if it's not next to a road that's going to get salt spray, you should be fine without wrapping them. Maybe the first year you might want to give them some extra protection, but they should not need wrapping every year.
Excellent, excellent. While we wait for more questions, I was interested in your comment about the birds and eating the seed heads and so on. Others have spoken of that in terms of gardens that attract birds and so on, but it sounds like even in this winter garden, you can be attracting a lot of birds.
Oh, definitely. Birds always like shelter. So having a bushy shrub or an evergreen shrub near your feeders is an excellent idea because then they're not exposed. The predator birds are looking for a meal still in the winter too. And of course, there's no leaves on the tree, so they get a really clear view of the poor little birds at the feeder. So try and have a shelter for them close by that they can duck in and out of. The birds will come and eat berries off your bushes in the winter, viburnums and some of the cherries and crab apples that get left on the plants. So definitely, and the seed heads from your flowers in your garden. So definitely keep the birds in mind when you're doing your fall cleanup and leave those things for them if you can.
Excellent. We have another question here. Wouldn't you want to cover at least the south side of smaller conifers so they don't burn with the sun? This is from Judy.
It really depends on the conifer. If you've got something like an Alberta spruce, they are very prone to burning. So you would probably want to cover something like that. But to be honest, again, once they're established and have a good root system and take up enough moisture in the fall, they should be okay. I have two dwarf Alberta spruce that the first year did get a bit of winter burn. Luckily, it didn't kill the growth tips. The new growth came out and covered that again. But I've never covered them, and that was only the first year that that I actually had that damage. So once they're established, as I say, and have a good root system that can take up enough moisture, they should be fine.
Okay. And we have a question from Brenda. How do you tell if you have a male and or female holly?
They actually sell them labeled as such. They're like, I have Blue Prince and Blue Princess. So, you know, it's pretty obvious that they're different genders. But the label will tell you this is a male, and you only need one male for every maybe 5 females. Although a friend did tell me this summer that her male died. It got tired out too much, I think. So I'm just joking. I don't think that happens in plants, but yeah, you definitely want to have the male and female, and they are labeled as such.
Excellent. And another question I was thinking, looking at your photographs, I didn't see much lighting. What do you think about lighting in a winter garden?
Oh, great idea, because the light has a whole new life too when it's especially if you uplight a tree and then there's snow on those branches, it's suddenly it's a diffused light. It's very magical. So definitely, the only problem with that is that oh, you might have to go out and uncover the, you know, if you've got a uplit something, because the light will be on the ground, and yes, the heat from the light will melt that snow, but it'll be a regular process for it to happen every time it snows. Twinkle lights in a tree, very magical. So definitely add something like that, or along a fence. Going back to the holly, if you're really into botany, you can tell the different female parts and male parts of the flowers. One will have just the stamens. The other one won't, like the male plant won't have a pistil. No, that's wrong. Marianne can't remember her plant parts right now. The male plant won't have the ovaries.
Yes.
And the female plant will. So you'd have to look at the flowers very closely, but when you're in the nursery, they're labeled. So sorry, I just thought of that after we moved on.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in here to suggest that this might be a good time to bring it to a close. Our time is up. I really want to thank you, Marianne. I always really enjoy your presentations, and this was a really good one. And I might add that if cold really is a 4-letter word, then bring it on, I say. Let's welcome winter. So thank you so much, and we'll see everyone again next week at the same time for Trial Talk Live.